And we are live for the launch of In the Desert by Barbara Beyer. Welcome, Barbara. How are you?
Very good, thank you. Lovely to be
Good,
here tonight.
good. I thought I would get us kicked off here with just a little bit of information about the book, giving folks time to join. So I'm going to read the back of the book, sort of description of the book, and then some of the author blurbs just to kind of eat up a little bit of time as we wait for folks to join. So, in the desert, a phone begins to ring. A traumatized movie star returns to his dying hometown to find the woman he loves has disappeared. He vows to find her. In the Desert follows five friends as the consequences of a bartered 24 hours from their childhood unravel in betrayal, murder, undying love, and a phone booth at the end of the world. This is a hell of a book. I'm excited to be here, Barbara. Some striking things people have said about the book. In the Desert evokes the danger and magic that lies in the parched landscape and in the restless hearts of those who live there. Barbara Beyer's cinematic writing creates an electric portrait of lives spinning on their edge. And that's from Ronan Hession. And then Casey Stegman writes, In the Desert is the most wildly original and compelling novel that I've read in the last few years. That's high praise. Fans of Emily St. John Mandel, David Lynch, and Wim Wenders will find themselves right at home in this character-driven, speculative adventure like no other. But be warned, your heart will break. You will definitely shed a few tears. You'll be on the edge of your seat. And most of all, your faith in love and the human spirit will be renewed. Casey Stegman. Jennifer McMahon wrote, In the Desert is like watching Paris, Texas, and Blood Simple in 3D, on acid at a blistering hot drive-in movie theater. This is the American dream turned bad and mean, the death of naive and youthful fantasy on tortured desert highways, the agony of lost love. It is dark and so damn beautiful you'll want to read it again and again. I swear you will never forget this novel. It will haunt you, reinvigorate you, and make you believe that even at the end of all things cherished, true love can endure. Read it, love it, tell everyone about it. In the Desert is a true classic. And I love Stephanie Austin's blurb. In the Desert is a wild fucking ride, man. Barbara Beyer writes without fear and leaves nothing untouched. Form, memory, time, love, death, and secrets. So many secrets. This novel invites you into a fever dream, one that will stay in your bones long after you wake up. Stephanie Austin. And I'll read a couple more here. Melissa Flores Anderson wrote, Barbara Beyer's In the Desert takes readers deep into the cold, dry night of an unnamed Southwestern community, through time and space and back again. Beyer entwines so many threads for her group of friends and acquaintances and is masterful at tying them together by the end of the novel. Her storytelling and inventive twists defy genre and will keep you reading late into the night when magical phone booths and whimsical carnivals are most likely to appear to offer a wish for a price. That's Melissa Flores Anderson. Finally, Noel O'Regan writes, a propulsive, original, and startling read. If the likes of Ford and Wolfe had dirty realism, Beyer, with her collection of misfits, dreamers, and lost souls, is pioneering a path in dirty cosmic realism. A striking debut. High praise for this book, Barbara. And I was honored to blurb the book as well and absolutely love this novel. I like how so many of the people that talk about it talk about how it defies genre. To me, that is one of the most striking things about it. It doesn't fit easily into a category. And I think that's part of its genius. So as we kind of get started here, for folks who are tuning in, you can ask questions on the platform that you're on. If you're on YouTube or Instagram or Facebook, you can ask questions and we'll see those questions in the comments. So feel free do that. But before we get to the questions, Barbara, I just wanted to read your bio real quick. Barbara Baier is a working class American writer living in Ireland for over 25 years. Her critically acclaimed collection of stories, Some Days Are Better Than Others, from Reflex Press, was shortlisted for the Saboteur Awards. Her short fiction has been published and prize listed widely, including Pushcart, Best Small Fictions, and Best Microfictions nominations. She was shortlisted for the Irish Book Awards, Irish Short Story of the Year in 2023, and longlisted in 2021. A recipient of an Irish Arts Council Literary Bursary and an Agility Award, she is an editor of Motel from Cowboy Jamboree Press. In the Desert is her debut novel. And what a debut it is, Barbara. So as we kind of get kicked off, like I think that one thing that I saw often in your blurbs and that stuck with me is we have this very realistic, grounded sense of place. So there's cosmic elements, otherworldly portals, all those kind of things are happening. But can you talk to us a little bit about where the novel is set and how the desert serves as a character in your work?
Right. Okay. So the desert is, or In the Desert is set in the American Southwest. It's ambiguous where exactly it's set, and I did that on purpose because I think it could be set anywhere in the American Southwest. But I did have a general idea of in my mind based on personal experience, but I didn't want to really go with specifics. And I've traveled to the American Southwest quite a bit, mostly for jaunts to Vegas.
Yeah.
Because I lived in San Francisco for a good many years, and we'd be like, yeah, let's go to Vegas, or so we'd hop down there, and staying in Vegas is one thing, but it's all bright lights, big city kind of thing. But on the periphery, there is this vast emptiness, or at least you think it's empty. And I always wanted to really go and explore, but it just rarely happened, And then one day I got a phone call. I was living in San Francisco, as I said. I got a phone call from a friend from Boston. His name was Alvin. And this was before mobile phones, mind you. So we're going back.
Going way back.
And he said, "Oh, I'm here." And I said, "Oh," I was like, "Okay." And he goes, "Yeah. We Brian and I, a friend of his, read about this church called the Church of St. John Coltrane, which worshiped to the music of John Coltrane." And they read this article and immediately got in this big old 70s Impala and drove across country to check out the church, pick me up. Then we drove down through Central California. The Impala blew its thermostats in the middle of Death Valley. And anybody knows anything about cars, when you blow the thermostat, until you get it fixed, you have to blast the heat. The heat. So there's us literally melting through Death Valley until we got to Vegas. Anyway, so we went to Vegas. We crashed in a motel, which has a look in my book, and
Nice.
picked up another girl, and then we just drove around the place, around the whole Southwest. We spent I don't know how many days. And the thing that really struck me was it was like an oasis of magic in the middle of America. Well, not really in the middle of America, but in this corner of America was this place of vast open spaces, and 5 different weather systems playing out across the sky. And I remember in particular, we were in Navajo Nation, and we stopped to get drinks at a convenience store. And I remember asking, did they have any souvenirs? And I got a real cold shoulder. And I was saying to Alvin, I said, geez, I just asked for souvenirs. He goes, this is where people live. This is not a tourist place. This is where people, this is people's homes. They don't have tourist things here. Pick up a rock.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, yeah, like this is, to me, it's like when people come to Ireland, it's the same kind of sort of thing. But the thing about it is like we camped out under the stars in the Grand Canyon. We drove through all of the valleys, New Mexico. I came back in Santa Fe, train back from Santa Fe, and the place was haunted. The train station was haunted, and it was just such an adventure that I knew someday I was going to write about it.
How could you not?
And so, yeah. And then, but it wasn't only that. I just remember another thing that really inspired me about this book was, I remember in the 90s, I don't know if you've heard of this, but there was a phone booth in the Mojave Desert, right? And it was like in the middle of nowhere, and people would, somebody got the phone number for this phone booth, and people would randomly call the phone booth, and then other people would randomly just drive to the middle of the Mojave Desert to see if somebody would call. And it was just this whole thing before the your smartphones and everything. This is what everybody was doing for fun. And I thought, Jesus, how did they ever get that phone booth hooked up in the middle of the Mojave Desert? Like,
right.
Maybe it's a magic phone booth. So, so that was something else that just kind of inspired me. And then there was a photographer, a really famous photographer called Keith Bernstein, who did this photo, and I came across it on the social media. It's actually the cover of my book, like this.
Mm-hmm.
It's a stunning photograph. It wraps around to the back. But and I just said, okay, this is it. We're going to have a phone booth, and there's going to be something special about this phone booth. So those are all kind of the things that inspired me about this book. Those the kernels that were crackling, popcorn in a pan, is sizzling, and then it just pops. And so the whole story just started popping everywhere. So
I love it. One thing that's interesting in this story, you've got some really interesting and complex characters. They don't do what we expect, which is great. I think when characters are too predictable, we lose interest. But the women in the novel, they face incredible struggles. So there's human trafficking, there's women dealing with male violence, but they're strong and complex women, and they're able to overcome their circumstances. Can you talk to us a little bit about your female characters, how they came to life for you as you wrote the novel?
Okay, yeah. In the early stages of this book, I was like, there was a lot of the male characters doing the saving, and I'm just like, no. Hold on, back up. And I really just completely got rid of all of that. I said, in real life, there's no heroes, galloping in on a white stallion. You got trouble. You got to figure it out yourself and save yourself and those you care for. And, I did bring my female characters, some of my female characters, to some very dark places. And, people might say, well, why did you do that? Well, life's hard, and even what might seem very dark, is prevalent. It's a hard world and it's a hard life. And, I don't shy away from that in this book because, why would you? Like, if as an author, I want to get across the truth of, people's existence and people's lives and what they actually have to deal with. I don't deal in euphemism. I deal in, cold, hard reality. And which may sound contradictory because there's a bit of magic and stuff in this book and surrealism, but it contrasts it goes back to the whole desert setting. You know, there's this cold, harsh reality of, you know, a struggle in this environment, but it's also full of magic. And that's what these characters' lives are like too. So they all have dreams. They all want to, you know, do other things and, you know, overcome obstacles. And, you know, they do. I'm not going to give any spoilers away, but, you know, I like to explore the choices we make and the repercussions of those choices. Okay. So, you know, something seemingly so minor can have this, you know, this butterfly effect on the rest of our lives and other people's lives. And that's kind of going on in the background of this book the whole time. But the women, I purposely did not want to paint the women as weaklings, or, you know, they have weak moments and, you know, feelings of doubt and, you know, despair, but they're not weak women.
They are not. They are not, and I love them. They're really interesting, and not only are they not weak, but they're also not predictable. As I said, I think to me that's kind of a strength of this novel is you know how sometimes you can hear that song and that, you know, you can put the needle down anywhere in the record and it sounds exactly the same. That's not the case with this novel. So there, it's nonlinear narrative, and then also there are things that are like you go from one chapter to the next, and you're like, holy shit, I didn't see that coming. So to me, that's a real strength of the novel. But one thing that I loved about the novel is that at its heart there are these unabashed, unashamed love stories. So we have Jean-Key and Dakota, we have Jesse and Raphael, and then Michael and Alice just is heartbreaking. So there's the mother's love for the children, and then there's this again, Michael and Alice, this passionate love story that crosses time and literally crosses space. Can you talk to us a little bit about writing a love story and how that shaped for you as you work through this novel?
Yeah, like when the genesis of the story, I had this idea of this suicidal Hollywood kind of has-been that comes back to his hometown in the desert to, you know, basically end his life. And he opens a Bible in the drawer and sees a note from the love of his life, who's also struggling and talking about ending her life. So he sees that and he vows to find her. So that is the whole genesis of this idea. And I just thought, you know, love is something that can give you reason to live or reason to die. And, you know, I wanted to get at what all these various forms of relationships can take. You know, as I have the pure romantic vision of love and Alice and Michael, and, you know, and then I have the one, you know, with the Raphael and Jesse, where, you know, there's a lot of obstacles and a lot of, you know,
kind of heartbreaking
stuff they have to overcome.
Right.
And then there's a more mature love of Dakota and Jean-Key, like, you know, and I really like those two characters a lot because, you know, people think middle-aged or older people just kind of shrivel up and die, and they don't have sex, or they don't, you know, have dreams, or they don't have visions of where they want to go or what they want to be, or a sense of adventure. But these two characters very definitely do. So yeah, I mean, you know, and even the love story between Alice and Michael is tinged with tragedy and the repercussions of the choices that they make. But
yes,
what I'm trying to get across is anything worth having is, you know, is worth fighting for. I mean, that's a cliche, obviously, but, you know,
some cliches are true.
Yeah. I don't think this story would be what it is without the love stories in it.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah.
And one thing too is for folks who haven't read the novel yet, there's a little bit of spice in some of these love stories. As a writer, that's like one of the most intimidating things for me is to write anything that verges on intimacy. How did you feel with those pieces, and how did you find your bravery to do those so well?
Um, yeah, like we're all adults here, you know, or hopefully, I don't think the young children are going to be reading this book. But
Yep.
you know, I just call it what it is. You know, like I said before, I don't really do euphemism. If the characters are having sex, they're having sex. I don't call it, you know, his little man or whatever. It's his, you know, I don't know who's watching now, so I'll mind my language here. But you know, it can be explicit, and you know, like there's a few explicit scenes, but it's not prevalent. So I think because of that, when you do have an intimate scene, they really jump out because I don't shy away from describing not only the physicality of it, but the emotional part of it as well.
Hmm.
Because you
Hmm.
know, it's much more, it's you know, much more intense when you have emotions in the act, though those emotions can be dark as well. So you
Hmm.
know, but yeah, so you know, be warned or look forward to it.
No, I think you handle it masterfully, just like the love stories in general. So to me, it just makes the story more real. But one thing that comes up a little bit frequently when people describe the novel, both in like the blurbs you have from authors and also in some of the early, Goodreads reviews, is this idea of it being a bit of a fever dream, right? So you have these surreal elements you've mixed in with this very gritty real world setting. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about the use of those surreal elements and then maybe what draws you to include that in your work.
Okay. So like I said, you know, magic is all around us. Like, and I don't mean, you know, hocus pocus. I mean, you know, just elemental stuff. And we, whether we choose to acknowledge it or recognize it is, you know, we're all going about our lives and everything. And but sometimes you might be taking a walk through the woods and you might sense something. Do you know, there's nothing there. Maybe it's an animal, maybe it's not, maybe it's something else, but you just the hairs on your neck stand up. Do you
Hmm.
know, there's something there, and you probably want to get away with that from that as quickly as possible. That's what you're saying. And in my house in Ireland, for example, there's all sorts of shenanigans going on for a while here. I'm like, you know, I'd feel things brushing against my ankle and there's nothing there. Or one day my son and I were sitting at the kitchen table and I had this big, heavy glass vase, and it was on the counter, wasn't near a cooker, wasn't in the sunshine, wasn't anything. It just exploded.
Hmm.
We were looking at each other, go, what the fuck? And then like, and then another glass bowl, like maybe a couple of weeks later, exploded. And I'm like, okay, things are getting out of hand around here. So I just had a chat with the house, whatever. And I just said, lads, let's chill, okay? Because, you know, we all have to live here together. And I hadn't had any trouble. But, you know, I thought it was really odd because this is a greenfield site where I'm living. There was nothing here before except a mini golf place.
Hmm.
But then about a year ago, they were doing an archaeological dig about a block away from me.
Hmm.
And I work for the council. So I asked the county archaeologist, well, what's the story? And they were doing a dig of a 5,000-year-old settlement
Oh
that
my.
was just like a block away from me. And I said, well, here's where I live. Could that have been part of this? And he goes, oh yeah, absolutely. So sometimes you just have to go back a bit. So all of these things, you know, in that I kind of over my course of my life have been exposed to that, just random little things, bigger things like this. I just said, no, I need to incorporate it as just another aspect of real life. It's just something that we're not programmed to, acknowledge. So that's why I tried to include. I included it. Plus, because the desert is just another one of those spaces to me. It's a place of
Right. It's one of those places where you feel that sense of presence or otherness, maybe. And so it feels like a natural place to mix in these elements. And of course, that's my storytelling style. So I'm drawn to stories that do that. Why don't you, maybe at this point, would you like to read a little to us from the novel?
Sure. I think I'll start with the opening chapter. If people have the book, they've probably read it by now, but maybe not. Now, one of the things that I did with this book is that with the nonlinear narrative, as you mentioned, Andrew, this book starts at an end. He runs, heavy breath puffing ghosts into the misty desert air. They haven't found him yet, but they will. He must find her first, if nothing else, that. Milky Way splashed like God's outcast children across the sky. Moonlight glazes a milky cataract over dust and dirt, shrub and stones. Where is it? Where's the damn phone booth? Eyes darting, head turning. He doesn't see the rock jutting from Brittlebush. Trips. Ground meets him cold and hard as he rolls from the landmine hiss of a disturbed rattler. No Jesse to save him this time. He gets bitten, he's a goner. And they won't have to shoot him, just watch him die. He curls into an armadillo ball, cuffs his ears against the demon cackle of coyotes, the rumble of rolling thunder. Give up, you're no hero. It's hopeless. And if he's learned anything in his long, short life, it's that hope is what you cling to when you don't have the guts to pull the trigger. You need to believe now, Raphael. He never was much of a believer in anything except himself, and look where that got him. Still, he's lived in the desert long enough to know strange comes and goes, and magic proffers its wares whether you believe or not. Fuck it. He gets up, keeps going. Shouts. Searchlights scour the sand, licking his heels. Dogs bark. A nightmare screeches, drones drag race down from the mountains. Minutes, only minutes before they reach him. Faster now. Move. He's seen what they do, what they'll do to him, to them. There, a silhouette on the horizon. He's found it, finally. The phone booth is cactus clustered on three sides, door open, light off. She's leaning hard, head on top of the phone. She could be resting or not. Cold metal bites his palms as he grabs the edges of the open door. She falls into his arms, eyes ablaze, searchlights closing in, hounds rabid at their scent. Jesse. His voice is sandblasted hoarse, heart ragged. He gasps, might puke. You found me. I will always find you. He kisses her, world closing in, and all he wants is this kiss, and it can end. Right here, right now. Sky fall or bullet rain, he won't feel a thing, only her dry lips warm against his, her skin hot under his desperate hands. Raphael, Raphael. She brushes his tears away with her thumbs. Breath mists and glass fogs. He strokes her hair while sand blows in the open doorway, dunes at their feet. Her breath smells of stale smokes and pints of resignation. Eyes star bright as she looks up at him on this desperate night. Eyes full of hope, because hope is always the last thing to die. More shouts. Light slashes the booth. He holds her, will shield her from the future mere minutes away. He pulls her close, so close not even death can come between them. She pushes him away. Close the door. Close it now. It won't budge. Door old and desert dry, the hinges creak and groan, but it won't move, only rattle. He two-hands it and the handle snaps off. Jessie falls to her knees, digs out the rock crammed in the metal runner, dirty fingernails fracturing, breath panting. Now, Raphael. He forces the accordion door closed. The light goes on overhead, a beacon for their bullets. They wheeze as they pass, ricochet off nearby rocks, and send shale shards flying. Ain't no escape. Come out with your hands up. It's not his voice, but sure as shit he's there behind him, darker than their past and just as relentless. Jesse pulls Raphael up with one hand, picks up the receiver with the other, doesn't drop it, dials. And somewhere, in some place, somewhere, in a dream, as bullets rain like falling stars upon them, someone answers, and the wind begins to howl.
Okay, you have my attention. Okay, so as we open up there, we have one point of view, but we do shift points of view during the novel. So your characters in one of the blurbs are described as misfits, dreamers, and lost souls. Can you talk a little bit about the decision to tell the story from different character point of views and how you maybe arrived at that?
Okay. Yeah, I started off with Raphael and his kind of story. And, you know, but very, very quickly decided that I couldn't tell this story just from one point of view. Because it's a very complex story. Even though it's hopefully not complex to the reader, because I did a lot of work to make it, easy to read. But to truly get at the characters' motivations, their histories, their choices, each one had to tell their own story. Mm-hmm. And, it was a very early decision, and it was an essential decision. And the fact that it's not only from one point of view, it's nonlinear. So it goes, like, as we said before, it goes back and forth in time. So you get a real clear snapshot of all not snapshot, but it's a real in-depth kind of characterization that I don't think there's no way I could have gotten it just from one or even 2 points of view. Mm-hmm. But it was a lot of work.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But yeah, it flows seamlessly, even though we are moving around. It's not nonlinear. And to me, that's one of the things that makes it feel fresh, right? It's not what we always are see often. So a lot of times we have the more linear, progressive story. Nothing wrong with that. But to me, this is breaking out of some of those, restraints, if you will. But question here is, who are your influences? So if we were to think about writers, films, directors, musicians, who are those folks who've made you the writer that you are?
I was always a reader. I mean, from a very young age. I remember going to the library for, we had a library period in primary school, and when we were young, and the librarian would read us The Hobbit, or this story that really captivated me. It's out of print now, I believe, but it was called Knee Deep in Thunder by Sheila Moon. It touches on native creation stories and all of that. And I loved Ursula Le Guin and the Ursi trilogy. One thing which means kind of an outlier to that is I once went to this used books. Well, it wasn't a used bookstore, but I've worked in bookstores in my life, and when you return books that don't sell, you don't return the whole book; you just rip the cover off, and right. You're supposed to destroy the actual books. But there was this one bookstore that had all of these thousands and thousands of books with no covers. So it was really hard to decide. I was told, okay, you can go get 3 books. So I picked up this one, and it was called The Idiot. And I thought, oh, that's so funny. It's called The Idiot. And I must have been 11 or 12. Oh, and I lived on the beach near the beach at that point, and I spent one summer literally forcing myself to read that book because I'm like, no, it's not gonna beat me, and it was tough. But it really, really impacted me, you know, just as a reader and as a person to read that. And I remember also around that time I read Gone with the Wind, you know, for this epic storytelling. And then moving on, you know, to my 20s and stuff, and a book that really impacted me was this book called Days Between Stations. It's by Steve Erickson. And it was the first time I'd read a non-linear narrative. And that also had a bit of, you know, the surreal in it as well. And I just thought it was one of the best books I ever read. You know, I still think that, you know. And, you know, I'm a big fan of Stephen King's early books and John Connolly's, Charlie Parker books. These days, I have a huge to-be-read pile. I mean, huge. But I usually read anything by, you know, a lot of Irish authors like Ronan Hesson. I usually read anything that he has coming out. I'm currently reading Stephanie Austin's book, Burn, which I highly recommend. I'm really loving it. And Sabrina Hicks' collection, Coyote Girls, coming out next month. And that is a stunning collection. And I'd also be on the lookout for an Irish author called Jennifer McMahon. You read one of the blurbs from her. She has novels on the go that are really stunning, and she was a lot of help to me in the early drafts of In the Desert as well. So, in regards to movies, like in regards to effects on me, I think now this may seem really odd, but there was this movie I watched when I was living in Boston called Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer. Mm-hmm. And have you seen that?
I have.
Yeah. And I was just like, it absolutely scared the living daylights out of me. And the reason why it did is because it was a horror story, but it was set in complete normalcy. Like it was just told like this was a thing. Like it was like a documentary.
Right.
It was a horrible thing I'd ever watched in my life. And it really, really impacted me and how I thought about, you know, reality and how other people think so completely differently from me, but in trying to understand all of that. So that kind of affected me. I love Wim Wenders, obviously, and David Lynch, Jean Cocteau, I'm a big fan of. And then there was this other movie from New Zealand called The Quiet Earth. I don't know. Have you ever seen that?
Which one?
The Quiet Earth, it's called. It's an 80s movie. It's an apocalyptic movie where everybody dies except the people who were literally dying at the moment everybody died, and they were the only survivors.
I don't think I've seen that. I'll have to add that to my list.
So it's really out there, but it really affected me a lot. So, you know, but I used to watch movies like crazy. I was a big, you know, I've seen just about everything really. So.
Well, I do think David Lynch would love this book, just for whatever that's worth. Yeah, and so I was going to ask too: is there anything that you hope readers take away from this book that maybe might not be obvious, kind of at first blush?
I think. You know, like you can read this book and you can just turn the pages and get and see the story. But I would love it if people just said, you know, looked at it maybe again and saw all the different connections and all of the different clues and all of the different, you know, everything from the chapter titles, because I don't do chapter numbers. All the chapter titles are units of time, so or expression. Time in some way. So just to, you know, to see what else is going on there other than just, the narratives and stuff. So, and how intrinsically everything hinges on everything else, and how interconnected the characters and their stories they are, just like life, just like everybody's life.
I think my favorite, I love that you titled chapters versus numbers, but I think my favorite title is Time to Die, Motherfucker, which is one of the chapter titles. Just for folks who haven't read the book yet, give you a flavor for what some of these titles might be like. But what can you tell us, sort of writer to writer, about any writing rituals you have? So like when, where, how do you approach your stories? As you and I talked, and you describe yourself as a working class writer, and I'm one of those too, in the sense that we have, work that dominates a large chunk of our time. So what does your writing routine look like?
Right. So I basically carve out time when and where I can, like I have 2 30-minute breaks at work. So you'll see me in the cafeteria scrawling away in my notebooks. When I first started work, I've been working there for like 7 years now. When I first started working, people would like, oh, come talk with us, come sit with us. And I said, oh yeah, I'm just kind of working on this, and now people just leave me alone. So they just let me go. Barbara's writing over there, leave her alone. But nights and weekends, like I have 2 boys, they're older now, but we all live together still. And I have 2 dogs, and there's a rabbit, and there's life in the house. So, we all kind of, we all have our own spaces, but we're a family. So, you have family stuff, and just sometimes just you be tired. You work all day. You like, maybe you go to the gym. I'm trying anyway. And you come home and you're like, you just want to sit in front of the fire. You just want to veg out and watch something on TV or read a book, but I have to force myself sometimes. I'm not one of those people that, always want to write and always want to do everything. I just like sometimes sit your ass down and do what you need to do, and I found COVID actually was really good for my writing practice, because I thought we were all going to die. So I said I better get the stories that I want to tell written. Now that was another book. This is In the Desert isn't my first book I've ever written. It's the first novel I've ever published. But during COVID, I wrote this kind of auto fiction. I was like, I can't die without this story being told, kind of thing. And I wrote 800 pages in a very short period of time, quite frantically. But that hasn't seen the light of day. It's a bit of a mess.
I understand. We all have a drawer full of those, if we're honest, right? So one thing that I would say about this book, and I've said as much as I've described it to other people, is it feels very bold to me, in the sense that you don't really shy away from going there. It's a love story that I'm not going to be ashamed about telling a love story. There's the sort of weirdness, the darkness, there's crossing time, dimensions, magical carnivals, portal phone booths. Like, I feel like a lot of writers put up for themselves artificial guardrails, if you will. And one thing that I'm always wanting to do as a creative person is sort of like tear down those guardrails. Can you talk a little bit about, how you sort of found the nerve to go in these big ways to some of these elements that I'm talking about, and then like how you lose your guardrails as a writer? Like, how do you take those off so that you can do something new and original?
Yeah. When I go back to the phone booth story, when I was talking about this phone booth in the middle of nowhere, and I said to myself, well, let's make it a magic phone booth. And I thought, oh no, I don't know about that. I don't know about. And then one part of me was going, the angel to the devil. One part of me was going, no, that's a bit weird. Don't do that. And the other part of me was like, yeah, fuck yeah, do that. And
always listen to the devil side, I think, in writing. That's just the rule, right?
And I gave myself permission with that one thing to do that, to go there. And then it was very liberating. I was like, as writers, we can do what that's our job. Our job is to create, it's to tell stories that captivate and entertain and educate, and but the bottom line is we're telling a story. And once I gave my permission, I just went all in. I was like, I can do whatever I want to do in this story as long as I make it believable.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the trick. You have to you can't just randomly throw something in there that makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, you can, but it's probably not going to work. So everything, the more strange elements of this book, like I said, are very rooted in a real world. So I mean, you look at the astrophysicist Hyun Kee. He's a scientist, but he has no answers. He always has more questions. So as you study the cosmos and you study the universe, you just have more and more and more questions. Mm-hmm. So you're open to and he's open to any possibility, because once you open yourself up to that, then the sky's the limit, or not the limit. There's no limit. So yeah.
No, I love that, and to me, again, I think it's something I'm always striving for in my work, and it's something I enjoy in the work of others. So it's one reason I really loved your book, and I'm drawn to certain types of films where we have some things that are, again, to your point, you can't just throw in surrealism just to throw it in. Like, it has to follow in the story. And to me, like, I have to have characters I care about. So if I were to criticize a lot of what I see in horror books, and then also I'd say more so in horror films, is often there are not characters that I care about, right? They're just sort of fodder for the meat grinder, the horrible thing that's going to happen, and I don't care when things happen to them. So to me, what you've done here is you do have these fantastical elements, but there are characters that we connect to, we see ourselves in. And to that point, we've got a question from one of our viewers. Bob asks, he says he is 2/3 of the way through the book. It's one of the best books he's ever read. High praise, Bob. He says, do you see yourself in one or more of your characters? Is there a little bit of you?
No, I'll tell you something. I've written, this is the 5th book that I've written. No, I wrote 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, 4th or 5th book that I've ever written. And this is the first book that is totally imagination. Like, I made everything up. And but saying that you can't help as an author for parts of your experience to seep into, the characters and the actions. But for the most part, I made all of these characters up, and
So you don't see yourself in Dakota a little bit, or Alice, or Jesse.
Maybe there's a little bit of me in each one of the characters.
Yeah.
But they're not. None of them are actually based on me or my own personal experience.
Sure.
Whereas some of my other books, you'd be like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. And one of my mentors would say, even in fiction, there's always a kernel of truth. So there's always a little of us in the narrative somewhere, in the character somewhere, even if it's the side of ourselves we, don't like to show in the villain or whatever the case may be, right? So let's see. I have another couple of questions, but maybe this is a good place for like a little bit more reading. Would you like to read another passage for us?
Yeah. Okay. I thought, I was thinking about bits to read, and I'm like, it's hard once you get past the beginning, because I don't want to give any spoilers or anything. Mm-hmm. So I'm just going to read a scene, because we were talking about love stories and love, in the book, and I'll just read a short scene here, and hopefully it doesn't give anything away. It might give a little bit away, but you'll want to know. You'll want to know. Right. He comes out of the desert that night. No one comes out of the desert ever, though plenty wander into it, never to return. She recognizes him immediately, even though he's too far away to make out properly in the dim streetlight. He probably doesn't recognize her, not with her face all puffy from crying and her hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, not to mention the wheelchair. Under normal circumstances, she might hide herself away until she's presentable, but right now she is just so happy and relieved to see him, for she thought he died in the fire, even though his bones were never found. With each step he takes towards her down the long, empty road, a tear forms in her eyes. By the time he reaches her, barefooted in jeans and a white linen shirt, long hair damp and draggling, blue eyes, looking from her wheels to her feet, to her legs, to her eyes. They've spilled out and over, and she can't stop crying. He sinks to his knees in front of her, lays his head in her still lap, and sighs. I'm sorry it took me so long. They remain that way, peaceful and quiet at the edge of the parking lot, him in dirt, her on pavement. Alice gently strokes his hair as the sun sinks and the galactic streetlights of the stars blink on. He's exhausted. Wherever he came from, it is far. She doesn't want to disturb him. Sorry, the light. She doesn't want to disturb him, nor let him go for fear he will vanish once more, this time forever. He doesn't move until she shivers. Startled, he scrambles to his feet. Neither of them speak, and it seems neither knows where to start when there is so much to say. Are you cold? He says finally. His voice is as she remembers from her dreams, calm yet deep, warm but confident. It's a voice a loud room would quieten to hear. I'm okay. It's no lie. Nothing can detract from the warmth his presence brings, not even frostbite. He laughs, strong and hard. It's not that cold, he says. She laughs along with him, stops. Can you read my mind? He considers for a moment or two as goose pimples rise on her flesh. I don't think so, not your exact thoughts, but I do have a pretty good idea of your emotions. Can you tell what I'm thinking right now? Close your eyes and think of me. Alice closes her eyes, thinks of him and only him, thinks of the strong tattooed muscles of his exposed arms, the softness of his eyes when he looks at her. She blushes. You want to kiss me? How bold she is to say it. She isn't like Jessie or any of her friends, has never had a boyfriend, not after the accident. There were boys who liked her, who asked her out, but Alice never felt quite herself in the wheelchair, never felt beautiful or attractive or worthy of love. But she dreamed of it, of him. I've wanted to kiss you for a very long time. He keeps his distance. Head down, he watches her through long lashes, waits. Alice nearly laughs from the joy of it. All caution, all reason is thrown to the wind as she says, well, what are you waiting for? He approaches slowly, puts hands on the armrests of her chair, and lowers his head. Wait, Alice says breathlessly. What is your name? Michael. He whispers against her lips as he kisses them ever so softly, as if he really is a dream or a ghost. Hers part as he presses, and they sigh together as their hands find each other's faces. There is a loud cough, and Carl says, get a room, you two, and laughs.
Love it. Love it. So for folks watching, if you have any questions for Barbara, please type them in the chat. We're going to wrap in a few minutes. We'd love to make sure that you get your question answered if you've got one for Barbara about In the Desert, about writing, about any of her other work. So one thing that's kind of interesting to me is you describe yourself as a working class writer. I love that. But what does that mean to you, and how do you think it impacts your stories and your creative process?
I think see, when I'm living in Ireland now, right? So it's a kind of a different thing over here than it is in the States. So, over here, there, particularly in the UK, we're not in the UK, but, we're kind of influenced by, all of their cultural stuff and the TV and everything.
Sure.
And, I think it's important for working class and poor people. Sometimes people group the two together. Working class to me is people who are working and struggling, but they're not, they're not having an easy time of it. And then poor, the really marginal classes of the poor people who, on the streets and what have you. But people sometimes lump them all together. But to me, everybody's struggling. Some people are struggling more than others. And I think, because being a working class person, you're working full time, you've got a family to feed, you've got bills to pay, you don't know how you're going to make it from one paycheck to another. It's hard to think, oh, maybe I'll write a book. But I think it's really important for people like us to explore their creativity, to have that outlet, to tell our stories. Somebody once said to me, they read a story of mine and said, oh, that's kind of like Dennis Johnson. That reminded me of Dennis Johnson. And I was like, well, I hadn't read Dennis Johnson at that point. So I said, oh, well, I better pick up a Dennis Johnson book. So I read a book called Angels, right? And I'm reading it and I'm like, geez, I certainly hope he's a working class writer, because otherwise it's, voyeuristic stereotypes here. And sure enough, he wasn't a working class writer. And it just, it just sat wrong with me. Now, I'd be one for not limiting people to writing, write what you know. No, write whatever the hell you want. But don't be, voyeuristic about it, and or stereotypical either. And that's why I do think, like, we should be able to write whatever we want about whoever we want, but more people with our background should be telling stories and should be telling our stories, or stories about anything, horror stories, fantasy stories, romance stories, right? Just do it. It gives you an outlet other than, paying the bills or stressing out or feeding your kids. It's really important for us to be creative as well. There could be, who knows, if somebody could be, I've always thought this, that somebody in, really struggling on the streets could have the cure for cancer in their brain if they were given the opportunity.
Right.
So I'd like to encourage people from our background and other backgrounds to explore their creativity, and who knows what they can create,
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I mean, I think art would be pretty fucking boring if it was just the bourgeoisie that gets to do it, right? The sort of folks who have the ability to, be an artist because they don't have to work or provide for their families. So totally agree with you. And I consider myself a working class writer too. So as we kind of wrap here, I was wondering if you could tell us what is next for you. So we know about In the Desert. It's getting a lot of accolades. What do we have to look forward to when it comes to your work, and what's next?
Okay, well, I kind of have 3 books I want to write next. So I'm trying to go.
Sounds familiar.
I'm kind of going back and forth between, like, if, for example, In the Desert does well and gains a good audience and gets good word of mouth. Oh, and by the way, before I forget, I'd like to say this. I'd like to thank my publisher, Cowboy Jamboree Press. This book, and the photographer Keith Bernstein, because this book would not be the book it is without my publisher. Mm-hmm. So I know for a fact that if I had signed, not that I had the opportunity to sign with a Big 5 publisher, but if I had signed with a Big 5 publisher, this would not be this book. So, my publisher, Cowboy Jamboree, Adam, really believed in this, gave me the opportunity to create and supported my vision. So I want to thank him for that. It means the world to me. So just before I forget, but yeah, I have one book. If this does well, it's open to a sequel. Like you could see a sequel happening here.
Okay.
And we see how it goes. So if there's a demand for it, tell me. That'll be my next project.
You heard it here first, folks. If you want the sequel, you've got to let Barbara know. Yeah. And I agree with you about Adam Van Winkle over at Cowboy Jamboree Press. I was honored to work with them on my first novel. And what we see with these indie presses, these small presses, is they are braver often than what you see come from the larger publishers, where things get sort of edited to what seems to appeal to a mass, if you will. And so the bold books I've read, quite a few of them come from these great small indie presses and great editors like Adam. So echo that completely. So Barbara, if folks want to keep up with you and connect with you, like what's the best way for them to do that?
Well, they can follow me on pretty much a social media, like crazy person. So you can follow me. I'm Barbara Beyer on everything, or my I have a website, barbara.beyer@wordpress.com. Or, you can buy my book. If you haven't bought it already, you can buy it it's available on your local Amazon. If you don't want to go through Amazon in the States, you can go on bookshop.org. It's available on bookshop.org. And in Ireland, it's available on buythebook.ie and O'Mahony's Bookshop in Tralee. So you can buy the book that way. And, I'm open to anybody who has any comments or wants to get in contact or any questions. And I appreciate if you've bought the book. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It means the world to me that you are reading this book, that you like this book, and please tell all your friends. Because one of the problems, as you know, Andrew, being with a small indie publisher is getting the word out. So, if you like it, please tell 3 friends. And if those 3 friends like it, they'll tell 3 friends. And, hopefully I'll sell a few books. And, I'm not in it for the money. I'm in it for sharing my stories. So, and I'd like as many people as possible to read my story. So thanks for being here.
I did share the bookshop.org link, and I shared the Amazon link earlier in the story. So this is available on ebook or paperback. So go out and buy the book. And I think to Barbara's point, books are discovered by word of mouth. And so telling people about the book, writing a Goodreads review, all those things are very, very important in order for readers to know about the book. And so I think this is, again, one of those books that is like fantastically weird and gritty and surreal and a unique story that people need to read, but they won't do that if you don't share it as a reader. So make sure you, put that review on Goodreads, put that star rating, whatever you have time to do, and let your people know about the book. So any parting words, Barbara? This has been a lot of fun. I was excited to be part of your launch, and I'm so excited for you and see what's next. I personally am rooting for that sequel. So I'm going to go ahead and go on the record about that. But any parting thoughts or words?
First of all, thank you very much, Andrew, for doing this with me. I really enjoyed it. And, you put me really at ease. I was a bit nervous. And thanks to everybody for coming and for reading my book, as I said. And, I've been writing for a very long time, as, many of you who are here tonight might know, since I was a young girl. And, to finally have a book out that I think is good. Like I really think it's good. and that and I hope you do too. But it really means a lot to me that to finally be at this point. I worked really hard for a really long time, pretty much on my own, learning, practicing, trying, and and my journey's just begun.
Yeah.
Not dead yet.
Love it. I love it. And we'll be excited to see what you do next. But thank you everyone for watching. Thank you, Barbara. And we'll end it here, but please go and check out her work. Please go and buy the book and let your people know about the book. And again, those Goodreads reviews really do matter. The algorithm is a pain in all of our lives, but also deeply important. So every time you leave a Goodreads review, that helps other readers who connect with that type of book to find it. So Barbara, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Andrew. And thanks. I just saw Rusty there was this thing there. Thanks so much. And,
thanks, everyone, for joining us. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.